25 years at Blake and Pierce LLP, and not once did I miss a deadline. Then, on the very afternoon I was supposed to seal the biggest energy deal of my career, I got fired by someone who probably couldn't even spell fiduciary, but happened to share the last name printed across the building's front doors. What she didn't realize was that I was the reason 64 Fortune 500 clients still trusted this firm. And by firing me, she'd just set in motion her own downfall. My name's Daniel Kerrigan, and at 54, my entire life revolved around being the most dependable corporate lawyer Blake and Pierce LLP had. That Friday started like any other. Coffee at 6:40, sitting at my desk by 7, combing through the Langford Dynamics acquisition documents for what must have been the 30th time. $86 million. Not our biggest deal, but important enough that I'd personally shepherded it through half a year of tense negotiations. It struck me as ironic, really. Just 3 days earlier, I'd been having lunch with Victoria Langford at Lakeside Country Club, talking about this very deal. We'd been sitting out on the terrace overlooking the 18th green, the kind of place where the servers know your drink order before you even sit down. She'd smiled over her plate of salmon and said, "Rob, you know how many lawyers I've worked with over the years? Most of them treat us like a number. You actually understand our business." That compliment had felt genuine back then, like something earned. Now, it felt like it belonged to a different lifetime as I stared at an email notification that popped up at 4:20 p.m. Not from my supervisor, Harold, who'd been tied up in depositions all week. No, it was from Madison Blake. "Please come to my office immediately. Ashley, 29 years old, Wharton MBA, daughter of our founding partner." She'd been installed as Chief Operating Officer just 8 weeks earlier, following what the firm newsletter had proudly called a comprehensive strategic review. Somehow that review skipped over every qualified candidate and landed on the boss's daughter, the same one who'd spent the last 3 years disrupting yoga studios in Austin. I'd honestly tried to give her the benefit of the doubt at first. Her presentation to the partners about modernizing client relations had a few fair points about digital communication and efficiency. But the moment she started tossing around phrases like paradigm shift and leveraging synergistic opportunities, I knew we were headed straight for the iceberg. I saved my work, straightened my tie, and took the long walk down the hall to the corner office that used to belong to a man with 40 years of experience. Ashley had gutted the place. The law books, framed certificates, all gone. In their place, motivational posters about embracing change and a so-called meditation corner stacked with crystals that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She didn't even look up when I knocked. "Sit," she said flatly. The chair across from her desk was set low on purpose, a cheap power move straight out of some beginner's management book. Ashley scrolled on her phone, her designer sneakers kicked up on the mahogany desk her father had imported from Italy. In the corner sat her boyfriend, Ethan, supposedly taking notes on a laptop, though the reflection in his glasses told me he was actually playing a video game. "Robert," she finally said, setting down her phone like I'd interrupted something important. "We need to discuss your trajectory here." I frowned. "Is there an issue with the Caldwell acquisition? I can walk you through the environmental compliance sections if you need clarification on the new Texas Environmental Code updates." "It's not about that," she said, leaning back and steepling her fingers like she'd practiced the pose in a mirror. "This is about cultural evolution, generational alignment, the strategic direction we're taking as a firm." Cultural evolution. That was rich. I'd billed more hours than any non-partner 5 years running. My client retention rate sat at 98%. I'd brought in $18 million in new business last year alone, including 3 Fortune 100 companies that had never touched Blake and Pierce LLP before. But sure, let's talk about strategic alignment. "I'm not following, Ashley," I said carefully. "Look, you're competent," she replied. The way she said it made it sound like a flaw. "But Blake and Pierce LLP is evolving. We need people who embrace innovation and disruption. People who think beyond traditional paradigms." I bit back the urge to remind her that law firms succeed precisely because we don't think beyond statutory and regulatory frameworks, that our clients paid us to keep them out of lawsuits, fines, and jail cells. "So what exactly are you saying?" I asked. "Today is your last day," she said, sliding a packet across the desk like it was a coffee receipt. "Security will escort you out once you sign this." I glanced at the pages. Non-disclosure agreement, non-compete clause, 6-month severance if I disappeared quietly. My stomach dropped. You're firing me the day before Caldwell closes? Ethan will handle the transition, she said, eyes already drifting back to her phone. Ethan, her boyfriend. The same guy who joined the firm 6 weeks ago as a client experience coordinator. The same guy I'd overheard asking our paralegal what due diligence meant. He had a sociology degree and a certificate in mindfulness coaching. Ethan isn't licensed to practice law, I said flatly. He can't legally handle client transactions or provide legal advice. That's no longer your concern. Her smile was all teeth, cold and empty. You've got 1 hour to clear your office. And Robert, she tapped the NDA, that document is non-negotiable. You share any client information, and we'll bury you in litigation. This firm has very deep pockets. I stood up slowly, keeping my expression calm while my mind ran in circles. 25 years. A quarter-century of skipped family dinners, working through holidays, and building trust with 63 major clients who relied on me to solve their million-dollar problems. 25 years of developing systems and templates that kept this firm running. My name wasn't printed anywhere official, but my fingerprints were on every deal that mattered. And then my thoughts turned practical. Lily's spring tuition, 40 grand due in 6 weeks. Jacob starting at UT in the fall, another 30,000 a year. My mother's assisted living, 3,500 a month. And of course, alimony to my ex-wife. Payments that wouldn't stop until I turned 65. Everything in my life depended on that job, my income, my reputation, my entire career. 1 hour, Ashley repeated, her eyes already glued back to her phone. Leave your key card with security on your way out. I walked back to my office in a fog, the kind that makes time blur at the edges. Through the glass walls, I could see people pretending not to see me. In law firms, news spreads faster than oxygen. I wasn't Daniel Kerrigan, senior counsel anymore. I was radioactive. Untouchable. 1 hour to erase 25 years. I pulled out my personal laptop, the one I used for late nights when the firm's outdated servers inevitably crashed. Then my phone, loaded with contacts I'd gathered over decades of building relationships that actually meant something. I grabbed my handwritten notes, pages and pages of insights and cross-references you couldn't digitize if you tried. My reference books, full of scribbled margin notes from hundreds of deals. And then there was my mug, the one that read World's Okayest Dad, a Father's Day gift from Lily when she was 12. What you can't fit in boxes are the things that matter. The trust of clients who called you first when everything hit the fan. The know-how that lives in your head after years of navigating billion-dollar contracts. The quiet reputation you build deal after deal. Security stood by as I filled the banker's boxes. They didn't say a word. They didn't need to. I thought about Victoria Langford, how her CEO had handpicked me after I saved their company from a massive regulatory disaster 3 years ago, how she'd invited me to her son's wedding just last spring. She had no idea that, come Monday, her $85 million acquisition would be handled by a guy whose deepest dive into law came from reading wellness blogs about contracts. When the paperwork was signed and my key card turned in, I walked out of Blake and Pierce LLP for the last time. Past the marble floors, past the glossy portraits of 3 generations of Hartman lawyers, I didn't think about what I'd lost. I thought about what they'd forgotten I still had. Because Tuesday was coming, the Texas Energy Council Forum meeting, where 47 of the most powerful attorneys in the state would be gathered. And every single one of them would want to know why Daniel Kerrigan was suddenly free. At 5:30 that evening, I sat in my home office still wearing the same suit, staring at the boxes stacked around me like relics from another life. The house felt too quiet for a Friday. My kids were with their mother for the weekend, and if things had gone differently, I'd be at the Meridian Steakhouse right now celebrating the Caldwell closing. Instead, I was unemployed, with 8 years to go before retirement. The shock was fading, and something sharper was taking its place. Not just anger, clarity. I opened my laptop and started listing what I still controlled versus what Hartman thought they did. The non-compete clause ran 18 months, but I knew Texas law better than Ashley ever would. Non-competes don't hold much water when you're fired without cause, especially if there's bad faith involved. And firing someone to make room for your unqualified boyfriend? That's pretty much the definition of bad faith. First, my systems. Over 25 years, I'd built detailed frameworks for energy sector deals, environmental compliance templates, and databases for tracking regulatory changes. No one at the firm had ever asked me to upload them to company servers, probably because they didn't even realize how valuable they were. Those systems sat safe and organized in my personal cloud storage. My own intellectual property, created on my own time, polished through hundreds of real-world cases. Second, the relationships. I scrolled through my phone, name after name appearing like old friends. Victoria Langford, Brian Keller from Silverrock Energy, Elena Cruz at Atlas Petroleum. 63 CEOs, CFOs, and general counsels who had my direct line because they didn't want to wait 3 business days for a client relations representative to get back to them. These weren't networking contacts. They were people who'd trusted me for decades. People who'd called me for advice about contracts, regulatory issues, and even their kids' college choices. They knew me because I'd been in the trenches with them during late-night crises and last-minute audits. That kind of trust isn't something you hand over to a 29-year-old with a PowerPoint about synergy. Third, the connections Ashley would never understand. The Texas Energy Council Forum meeting on Tuesday at the Summit Club. The monthly breakfast group of senior lawyers at Lakeside Country Club. The Texas Energy Law Conference, where I'd been a featured speaker for 6 straight years. My name carried weight in those circles. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Harold, my old supervisor. Heard what happened. Emergency partners meeting Monday. Ashley just announced Ethan's promotion to senior legal coordinator. This is insane. I didn't respond. The NDA was fuzzy about personal communications, and I wasn't about to hand them a reason to sue me. Still, Harold's message confirmed what I already suspected. The place was starting to panic. I spent that entire weekend planning my next move. By Sunday night, my dining room looked like a command center. 25 years worth of personal notes, flowcharts, compliance outlines, all spread across the table. Nothing proprietary, just the infrastructure that had made me indispensable. Monday morning, I created a new email address. R. Matthews Consulting. Not a law firm, just a professional presence. Updated my LinkedIn headline to Independent Legal Consultant, Energy Sector Compliance. No mention of Blake and Pierce LLP. No violation of any clause. Then, I waited 30 days. That was intentional. Show good faith, stay patient, build my case. And in those 30 days, I watched the cracks form. Blake and Pierce LLP began to come apart at the seams. By the time Tuesday rolled around, I was walking into the Summit Club for the Energy Bar meeting I'd been looking forward to. The dining room was full of familiar faces, 47 of the sharpest energy lawyers in Texas. I'd been attending these meetings for 15 years, and I didn't even make it to my seat before I heard my name. Rob Matthews, called Tom Everett from Summit Energy Group. Heard you've got some big news. Yeah, word travels fast in this town. Within minutes, I was surrounded. Everyone wanted to know what had happened, why I was suddenly available. I kept my answers professional but deliberately vague. Just exploring new opportunities, I said, more than once. Sometimes change opens doors you didn't even know were there. But the real talk happened that weekend on the golf course at Memorial Park. Rick Dawson from Energy Legal Partners invited me to join their usual foursome. By the time we hit the 7th tee, he got to the point. Rob, I've got 3 clients asking if you're open to project work. Nothing that would violate your agreements. Just independent consulting on regulatory compliance. By the 12th hole, both of the other lawyers in our group had similar requests. Apparently, word had spread that Ethan's so-called coordination efforts were turning into disasters. And they weren't exaggerating. The first crisis hit by week 2. Elena Cruz from Atlas Petroleum called my personal phone at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. Rob, I know you can't talk about Hartman business, Lily began, voice tense. But we just got a compliance notice from the Railroad Commission. Something about our pipeline permits. Ethan filed what he says is a standard response, but the potential fine is $2.3 million. I'd seen plenty of those notices before. 6 months back, the Texas Railroad Commission had started cracking down hard on the new pipeline safety rules. Every company had 60 days to fix issues, or get hit with escalating penalties. Lily, I can't give legal advice without being formally retained, I said. But as a friend, get a specialist. A real pipeline compliance lawyer. Right now, send me the notice. No charge, I added. I'll just take a quick look and tell you what you're dealing with. The document landed in my inbox minutes later. One glance told me everything I needed to know. Gulf Coast's pipeline monitoring systems were nowhere near compliant with the new federal standards. Ethan's so-called standard response was a copy-paste job that didn't even touch the technical requirements. They had 14 days left to fix a problem that would take at least 30. Lily, you need emergency counsel today, I said flatly. This isn't routine paperwork anymore. You're staring down potential criminal exposure if it's not handled right. By the end of week 3, I'd taken 8 similar calls. Every one of them followed the same script. Complicated regulatory issue, Ethan's half-baked reply, and millions in risk. Week 4 brought the one I'd been expecting, Victoria Langford. Her voice was calm, but tight, the kind of control that only comes from fury. Rob, the Caldwell acquisition closed, but there's a serious environmental disclosure problem. Ethan missed a new EPA rule that took effect last month. We're staring at $12 million in liability that should have been caught during due diligence. The board wants answers. I remembered that requirement. It was in my personal deal notes. Notes Hartman didn't have access to. Patricia, I can't comment on your transaction until my 30-day restriction ends next week, I said carefully. But after that, I can look things over as an independent consultant. She didn't miss a beat. Would Porter & Finch LLP be available for this? Porter & Finch LLP, a boutique corporate firm that ran lean, sharp, and efficient. Graham Porter, the founder, had been trying to recruit me for years, usually over scotch at the Ironwood Lounge. I think they'd be very interested, I told her. The 30-day mark hit on a Friday. That afternoon, I called Martin. Rob Matthews, he said as soon as he picked up. I was wondering when you'd call. Ready to talk opportunities? I think it's time, I said. Come in Monday morning, he replied. And Rob, bring your golf clubs. We've got some future to discuss. Monday morning at Porter & Finch LLP felt like stepping into a different universe. Blake & Pierce LLP was all glass and marble, designed to intimidate. Bailey's office. Pure function. Real desks, busy people, and the kind of quiet that came from competence, not fear. Martin, 69, sharp as ever, stood up as I entered. Rob Matthews, he said, shaking my hand. Been wondering when you'd finally walk away from that circus. I didn't exactly leave voluntarily, I admitted. He smirked. Madison Blake called me last week. Warned me about a former employee who might violate a non-compete. Said any firm that helped you would face litigation. My stomach tightened. And your response? I told her Porter & Finch LLP doesn't respond well to threats, he said dryly. Especially hollow ones from kids playing dress-up in daddy's suits. He gestured toward the chair opposite his desk. Coffee? We've got plenty to talk about. Over the next hour, he laid out his proposal. Senior counsel, not partner, at least not right away. That kept me clear of non-compete trouble. A 60-40 revenue split in my favor. Full malpractice coverage. And legal backup for when Hartman inevitably came after me. The thing is, Martin said, leaning back, clients are already calling. Caldwell, Thompson, a few others. They're not happy, but they're nervous. No one wants to be first to jump ship. So what's the plan? I asked. He smiled. Make it feel less like jumping ship and more like boarding a luxury yacht. That afternoon, I was at Lakeside Country Club, not for golf, but what Martin called strategic coffee meetings. The idea was simple. Let word quietly spread through Houston's business circles that Porter & Finch LLP was expanding its energy division. My first chat was with Tom Everett from Summit Energy Group, someone I'd known for over a decade. We sat on the terrace, overlooking the course, trading small talk until he cut to it. Rob, I hear you're exploring new opportunities. Graham Porter made me an offer I'm seriously considering, I said. Good firm, solid team. And your situation with Hartman? He asked. Clean break. I served my 30 days. No violations, no drama. Jim nodded slowly. Baker's had issues with Hartman's team lately. He didn't elaborate, but he didn't have to. That evening, Martin called. 3 more companies reached out today, he said. Word spreading. By Wednesday, I was drowning in crisis calls. Elena Cruz from Gulf Coast again. The commission had doubled their fine to $4. $7 million thanks to another weak response from Ethan. Lily, I still can't represent you, I said. But I know someone who can help. Immediately. As of next Monday, she asked. As of next Monday. That same day, Victoria Langford called, her tone lower, strained. Rob, The EPA's opening a formal investigation into the acquisition. They think we knowingly concealed environmental liabilities. This could go criminal. For the first time, I heard fear in her voice. Patricia was one of the toughest executives in Houston. She'd turned her father's struggling pipeline outfit into a billion-dollar empire. If she was scared, it was bad. Patricia, get specialized counsel, I said. This isn't something Ethan can Google his way through. Will you take the case? I'll be at Porter & Finch LLP Monday, I said. We'll talk then. Thursday brought the call I'd been expecting, but dreading. Robert. Edward Blake's voice was older, raspier than I remembered. We need to talk. Mr. Hartman, I said evenly. How can I help? You know damn well how. My firm is bleeding clients. 24 gone in 2 weeks. This ends now. Sir, those companies made their own choices. I haven't solicited anyone. Don't play me for a fool, he snapped. This is coordinated. You're doing this out of revenge. I thought of Ashley meditating in her glass office, Ethan's half-baked work, and 25 years of loyalty repaid with humiliation. No, Mr. Hartman, I said quietly. This isn't revenge. It's consequences. Silence. When he finally spoke again, his voice had shrunk. I'll handle Ashley. Just come back. Name your terms. Full partnership, I said. And my own division. Whatever you want. It's too late for that. It's never too late. William's voice wavered between command and pleading. I built this firm from nothing. I won't watch it die because of my daughter's mistakes. You should have thought about that, I said quietly, before you handed the keys to someone who thinks law is a tech startup. Robert, please. What do you want? Money? Clients? I'll give you anything. The desperation in his tone was raw. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. He'd built something remarkable over 47 years. But he was also the one who'd stepped away, who'd trusted his daughter's innovations to carry on his legacy. I don't want anything from you, Mr. Hartman, I said. I just want to do honest work for clients who deserve better than what they've been getting. When I hung up, I sat in my new office at Porter & Finch LLP, staring out at the Houston skyline. 14 missed calls from old colleagues. 25 texts from former clients. And an email from the Texas Legal Chronicle asking for comment on the mass exodus from Blake & Pierce LLP. I didn't respond, but the article ran the next morning anyway. Sources indicate the departures began shortly after the termination of a senior attorney who maintained relationships with many of the departing clients. They didn't print my name, but everyone in Houston knew exactly who they meant. By Friday afternoon, Graham Porter was grinning like a man watching the scoreboard light up in his favor. 31 companies have dropped Hartman or requested proposals from us, he said. Out of 64 clients total, I replied. He chuckled. Rob, in 40 years of practice, I've never seen anything like it. They're not just leaving Hartman, they're asking for you by name. That evening, I got a text from Harold, still inside the sinking ship. Emergency partners meeting tomorrow. Ashley's panicking. Ethan quit. Said the stress was messing with his chakras. William's cutting his cruise short. I set my phone down and poured a scotch. Ashley had wanted disruption. She'd gotten it, just not the kind she'd envisioned. Through the window, the lights of downtown Houston shimmered against the glass. Somewhere out there, Madison Blake was learning that running a law firm required more than buzzwords and PowerPoints. And somewhere else, 31 corporate executives were finally sleeping soundly, knowing their legal matters were being handled by people who actually knew what they were doing. The call that ended it all came 10 weeks after Ashley fired me. It was a Tuesday morning. I was in my new corner office at Porter & Finch LLP, finally a space big enough for my law books, when my assistant knocked. Mr. Matthews, Channel 11's asking for comment. Blake & Pierce LLP just filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I turned on the TV. The anchor was in mid-sentence. Confirmed, Blake & Pierce LLP, the 87-year-old law firm, has filed for emergency reorganization after losing 76% of its Fortune 500 clients in just 2 months. Sources cite catastrophic management decisions by recently installed leadership. The camera cut to footage of Ashley outside the federal courthouse, flanked by attorneys from Nelson and Grant LLP, the crisis management firm. She looked nothing like the confident MBA who'd fired me. Gone were the designer suits and the smug poise. She looked small, exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, a borrowed blazer hanging loose. For a second, I almost pitied her. 29 years old. Thrown into a position she wasn't ready for. Surrounded by yes-men too timid to tell her the truth. No comment, she repeated to reporters, but one wouldn't let up. Ms. Hartman, is it true unlicensed staff handled multi-million-dollar transactions? How do you respond to malpractice claims from 18 corporations? Ashley made the fatal mistake of stopping, of trying to justify the unjustifiable. This is a coordinated attack by competitors who... Are you referring to Daniel Kerrigan? Another reporter interrupted. The attorney your firm terminated 10 weeks ago? She froze. That's not. This isn't about any individual. The reporter pressed on. Sources indicate Mr. Matthews managed many of the clients who have since departed. Can you comment on the circumstances of his termination? Ashley's composure cracked. We made strategic decisions about the firm's future, she said, forcing a smile. Sometimes that means making difficult personnel choices. The camera zoomed in, capturing her confession on live TV. In a single soundbite, she'd confirmed my firing was strategic, not performance-related, undermining every legal claim Hartman might have had against me. Martin appeared in my doorway, shaking his head. She just made her lawyers' jobs 10 times harder. It's painful to watch, I admitted. And it was. Not out of triumph, but because watching a century-old institution crumble was tragic, no matter who caused it. My phone rang again. Edward Blake, for the third time that week. Robert, he rasped. His voice was frail now. It's over. The judge wants a full accounting. The state bar's investigating Ashley. My life's work, it's gone. I felt a surprising stab of sympathy. I'm sorry it came to this, I said honestly. Are you? He asked bitterly. Yes. Your father built something worth respecting. You carried that forward for decades. What happened these past months doesn't erase that. He exhaled shakily. The trustees liquidating everything. 87 years of precedent, client relationships, institutional memory, gone, sold to cover debts created in 10 weeks. What about your people? I asked. The ones who didn't deserve this. Some will find work elsewhere. Harold is already interviewing. Most of the others, his voice trailed off. Good lawyers, Robert. They just needed real leadership. That afternoon, Martin called an emergency partners meeting. The mood wasn't celebratory, it was subdued. The bankruptcy trustee approached us, Martin said. They want Porter and Finch LLP to acquire Hartman's energy practice assets, client files, research databases, that kind of thing. But more importantly, they're asking if we'll take on their displaced attorneys. How many? Asked Diane Mercer, our senior litigator. 15 lawyers. 7 paralegals. Some support staff. There's solid people caught in a bad situation. Over the next week, I found myself interviewing my former colleagues. Harold came first. Older, tired, but finally at peace. Rob, I owe you an apology, he said, settling into the chair across from me. I knew Ashley was in over her head. I thought I could contain the damage until William came back. You were trying to protect your team, I said. I get it. I still should have spoken up when she fired you. We all should have. But she'd already decided anyone over 45 was part of the legacy problem. He gave a hollow laugh. Standing up to her wouldn't have changed a thing. By Friday, Porter and Finch LLP had extended offers to 8 of Hartman's former attorneys and 4 paralegals. The rest found new homes across Houston. Even in bankruptcy, good lawyers never stayed unemployed for long. The final settlement hearing was the following Tuesday. I attended, not as a party, but as a witness. My lawyer said it'd show confidence. Edward Blake sat alone at the petitioner's table. Ashley wasn't there. She was reportedly meeting with state bar investigators about possible sanctions. Your Honor, the bankruptcy trustee said, the debtor's assets have been successfully transferred to Porter and Finch LLP and 2 other firms. All displaced employees have found new positions. The only remaining issue is the disposition of $6.5 million in malpractice claims. The judge looked down at William. Mr. Hartman, she said, do you have anything to add?